You can now subscribe to Strava Craft Coffee and save 20% off every single time they send that delicious, rich, tasty CBD-infused coffee to your door. It's a no-brainer to subscribe to Strava Craft Coffee because not only do they send it to your door for 20% off every single time, but you can set your interval of how long you want it to go in between shipments, and they'll just ship it to you. You won't even have to think about it. Your coffee will run out one day. It'll show up the next day, and you'll be ready to roll. So you know how often you need coffee. Subscribe to Strava Craft Coffee and never have to worry about signing up to get your 20% off. It'll just keep coming. But if you just want one bag, you want 20% off that to try it out, you can, of course, use the code DNVR20 anytime. And, of course, if you want to try it out, you can come down to the DNVR bar and try out a good old CBD-infused cold brew. It comes right out of the keg. We got a kegerator for it down here. And, oh, boy, it tastes delicious. All right, let's hop into the show. Welcome in, folks, to the DNVR Broncos podcast. DNVR Broncos live for some of you on this Saturday night. Saturday Night Live, you might say, here on the DNVR Broncos podcast. And before we jump into the show, I want to give a huge shout-out to our presenting sponsor, MSU Denver Online. It's the place to go to get an online education. It is good stuff over there, rigorous and affordable online programs with the professors who bring the real world into the classroom. So make sure you check out msudenver.edu/online for all you need. The whole world is going online, and MSU Denver Online has been extremely prepared for this. So check them out.
My boys, what's up, man? I'm pumped to be talking about some Saturday football. Broncos back in the stadium today. And as crazy as it is, it was game-like. Despite being in an empty stadium, it was game-like. You had the crowd noise going, you had the music going, and you had the Denver Broncos defense going.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing, Zach. And man, I want to love this defense, and I want to give them credit, and I want them to get all the accolades that they deserve. And I truly believe they're a top 10, if not top 5 defense in the National Football League. But are you with me that it kind of hurts to see them dominate the offense like you have said they did? I just got done reading your story, which is published on the DNVR.com with tons of details. And it just, it kind of stings to read stuff like that.
It does. And you know what? Today, the defense was really good today because the offense was bad. And typically when I've given these reports of the defense dominating, it's because the defense has just been that good. But today, it was the offense being bad. And so it was easy in every single part of the game for the defense to look good and be good. And I want to give all the credit to the defense, and certainly will, but the offense was bad. This was the first time where the offense was just off. In every single stage, the offensive line was off. Drew Lock was off multiple times today, and his receivers were off. I mean, you had Courtland Sutton. Mace, we're used to Courtland Sutton dropping the first pass of the day and then stepping up and running away with it from there. No, Courtland Sutton dropped multiple passes. He was off with Drew Lock, although Drew took the blame for that one. And Drew was off, overthrowing receivers left and right. And boy, it just reminded me of the offense we've been watching the past 4 years. Now, I do think it's going to be way better than those offenses, but in the first real full scrimmage, it was all defense because of the offense.
Okay, this is how I read what you're saying and the reports that are coming out from the practices. How I read it is that this is something where you should prepare yourself as a Broncos fan watching this show for an offense that is going to be clunky and inconsistent early while it finds its way. Because here you go, you're playing at the closest thing to full speed that you've seen throughout the summer, and it had a bad day. And I think this sort of plays into the notion that with a lot of young players on offense, with a new scheme, it's going to take some time for this thing to find a consistent form.
Yep, you're 100% right, Mace. And, the first week of camp, the offense was clicking. The offense was looking good, especially all the young parts. Drew was looking really good. And we were kind of thinking, was John Elway wrong to say that we should temper the expectations for the offense? And now you get this next week of camp in the books, especially this scrimmage, and you're thinking, No, I think John Elway was 100% correct on that. So I'm not worried about this offense long term, but certainly the reality of expecting a slow start has definitely sunk in, and it's something we need to be prepared for. Week 1 on September 14th through week 4 through 8. Maybe that's when it really starts clicking. Ryan, you're shaking your head.
No, that won't do for me. I'm gonna be honest, guys. Like I'm not gonna sit here and be like, yeah, it's okay for the offense to just ease their way into things and be good in week 6. Like that's just it. They don't have time for that. This is a team that started 0-4 last year and saw their ship sink before it even left the dock. And while I understand why you're saying that might happen, that's not acceptable. It just isn't. So
that's very fair.
They're gonna have to figure this out one way or another between now and it doesn't have to be week 1, but maybe it's week 2, maybe it's week 3. Like there's not 6 weeks to sit back and figure it out. I realize this is a weird season and they've got a young offense and all that. There's plenty of excuses out there for them, but I'm not letting them off the hook like that. It's just that's not acceptable.
But that's why you have this defense. You've got a defense that supposedly should be able to carry this team and this offense through stretches where it looks kind of clunky and awkward. So you tell Drew Lock, okay, hey, try to avoid the big mistake. Ball security is job security, as Brock Osweiler said 3 years ago. And yeah, you're trying to win games 17-13, which I know is probably going to cause some people to tear the hair follicles out of their scalps because of what we've seen the last few years. But you should have a defense that is good enough to hold up its end of the bargain and ensure that you're not 0-4, that you're 2-2 or 3-3 until you get this offense figured out. And if you're 500 with that extra team going to the playoffs out of each conference this year, that puts you in position to make a run.
That's totally fair.
It does. Now, guys, good news and bad news. I'll hit you with the good news first, and that's that the Broncos won the scrimmage today. So very good news. Broncos get the dub today. Don't have to worry about being 500. And the bad news is, Mace, you said Drew Lock just needs to avoid the big mistake, and that did not happen today. Guys, there were 8 possessions of the first team offense going against the first team defense today. 4 in the first half, 4 in the second half. You guys already know the answer, so I'm not even going to ask. 0 touchdowns from the Broncos first team offense. And let me break down how those possessions went. The very first series, the Broncos got a first down, and then they were forced to punt. The second series, Drew Lock throws a pick. That's the one where he was off with Courtland Sutton. Courtland was running kind of a stop and go, and Drew threw the stop. So it was an easy pick for Devontae Harris, who was right there. Drew took accountability for that one, said that was all on him after. But right there, I mean, that was in the red zone too. Devontae caught it right around the 20-yard line. So brutal mistake there. The offense bounces back by a turnover on downs. But Vic Fangio says, you know what? I'm going to give you guys another shot. Stay out there after. I'm going to give you a 5th down. We're going to go full CU on this.
Love a good 5th down.
Don't go there.
And the offense says, no, thanks. We don't really want 4 more downs. So settle for a field goal. And let me remind, that drive started at the defense's 30. So they didn't have to go anywhere to get a field goal, and they didn't go anywhere. And then the next drive to round out the half was an interception. Justin Simmons picked off a pass in the middle of the field. It seemed like there was a miscommunication between Noah Fant and Drew Lock. Noah turned to his right on a 5-yard stick. Drew Lock, it looked like threw it to Noah Fant's turning left, but Drew said that wasn't a miscommunication after practice. So just a bad ball from Drew. Yeah, bad throw by Drew. Justin Simmons picks it off. And then Vic says, you know what? We're almost at halftime. Try another one. I'll let you guys out there again. And they weren't able to get anything. So the first half was rough. And just because of the way the offense has responded throughout the rest of camp, I was expecting in the second half something. They open the second half, guys. Von Miller comes out with a sack, probably would have been a strip sack in the game, but the play goes on, and play goes on to be an incompletion. And then the offense actually gets some momentum after that. They get 2 first downs. And Vic Fangio says, nope, I'm cutting it off. You guys have to punt. So just the time the offense was picking it up, they punt. And that was the only good news that I can deliver. The next 2 drives start on the 13-yard line. The defense's 13-yard line. So 13 yards from the end zone. The next 2 drives, and they settle for field goals both times. Don't even get a first down. There was an overthrow to Judy there. There was one completion to Vanette, which went for 8 yards. And Shelby Harris had a PBU. So 2 field goals when you're starting from the 13-yard line. I mean, just imagine in a game. This is the second half. Your defense gets a turnover at the 13-yard line, back-to-back series, and you get 6 points out of it. That takes the wind out. And then the final possession of the day, the Broncos started at midfield, and they start off the drive with a 3-yard screen to Noah Fant. So 2nd and 7, okay, not ideal. Then Vaughn gets a sack, and would have been a sack, but Drew gets it out because they let the play continue, and Courtland Sutton drops it. I mean, hits both of his hands, drops it, would have been a first down. And then Justin Simmons has a PBU at the line of scrimmage to force Brandon McManus to hit a 60-yard field goal, which he did. And nice. he had room to spare. So Brandon McManus for the first team offense was the OPOY for the day.
Well, you say that you talk about having to imagine it. We don't have to imagine it, Zach, because we've seen this for the last 4 years of Broncos football. So it's fresh in our minds, unfortunately.
Yeah.
How was the run game, Zach? A lot about the pass game. Did they run the ball at all?
Yeah, they did run the ball, and it probably would have been 3 or 4 yard gains all day, which is better than the passing game was doing. But this was a scrimmage. They were in full pads. You had some guys decked out, but they were barely even thudding each other. So it was really tough to see, if Phillip Lindsay would have been stopped 1.5 yards at the past the line of scrimmage, or if he would have been able to break it off for 10. So that's why it wasn't a full scrimmage in that sense. But speaking of the running game, Moore, Phillip Lindsay, and Royce Freeman. Melvin Gordon did not participate in the team part of practice. He was out there for the first parts of practice. And while Vic Fangio does expect Melvin to be back sometime this week participating in full, he said it is a concern anytime a guy isn't out there. So that's something to keep an eye on because it's a rib injury for a running back. There's a chance that he doesn't want to get tweaked up anymore in the next 2 weeks before opening day. So we may not see Melvin. I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see Melvin getting full team reps until week 1 opening night. But Royce Freeman stepping right in for him. Of course, Phillip Lindsay was the guy, the starting running back today with Melvin out.
Well, with that, then who do you think is going to start week 1? I mean, all of a sudden I'm saying, fine, if Phillip Lindsay's going to start week 1, if they're going to be easing Melvin Gordon back in, and that's okay. I mean, and it may be a week or two before we see that 50-50 split, but certainly I think Phillip Lindsay's got a window here to actually be the first running back out off the sideline when games start.
Don't give Phillip Lindsay a head start. You'll never catch him. That's all I'm saying for Melvin Gordon.
Phil would love that. Phil would love the opportunity to take and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just finished up a 30-round Dynasty League fantasy draft here at the DNVR bar, and I got Phillip Lindsay in the 5th round shortly after Melvin Gordon went, and felt great about it.
Well, today he would have been getting all the fantasy points for those two.
Zach, what about how much of these struggles were on the offensive line? You've talked a lot about Drew Lock, but we know that the right side of the offensive line has been a problem. It was when I was at practice yesterday. How much do you blame on the offensive line on today's practice?
Yeah, unfortunately, the right side of the offensive line, and Elijah Wilkinson. It was Von Miller who was consistently there. Now, there were a few blitzes where Alexander Johnson got in the backfield. Kareem Jackson would have had a sack on a safety blitz. And like I mentioned at the very end of practice, Justin Simmons came on an interior blitz and had a PBU. But outside of that, the pocket itself wasn't collapsing on Drew over and over and over again. It was the entire pocket. It was the right side. And now what maybe affected that was Bradley Chubb went out about midway through practice, and it was a tense moment for a little bit there. Bradley Chubb immediately went to the bench, and trainers went to look at the left knee, which he had ACL surgery on last year, took his brace off, was looking at it, but then he did get up, was walking around. It seems like it was just a scare. He had ice on it for the rest of practice. Von Miller, after practice, said Bradley Chubb's fine, compared the two to Ferraris, and said sometimes the check engine light comes on in Ferraris, and it doesn't mean it's broke. Vic Fangio seemed to be optimistic about it, but guys, I'm just going to wait until Monday until I'm saying that this injury is fully in the clear, because that's scary when we're talking about the exact same knee that had an ACL, and it was enough of a scare to keep him out the rest of practice.
I think the thing you have to consider is, okay, what does this do for his rehab? And is this something where pushing back as he did and getting as many snaps as he has in the last few weeks has exacerbated? Did they get him out there before he was ready? And I would look at this, and unless there's something unusual about this injury, this aggravation, this strain, whatever it is, I'd be putting the bubble wrap on, quite frankly, with Bradley Chubb, and I'd have him on a pretty strict pitch count. Even if he says he's ready to go in week 1, I'd still be going into it thinking, all right, but we're not going above, say, 35 snaps. I mean, this is where you've got to focus on the long term here with Bradley Chubb, because remember, this is his second ACL injury, not his first.
Yeah, God, I hate this. And Zach, you're the only one who saw the body language out there, and I think that's the most important thing when it comes to this stuff. Is like, he said after practice just didn't feel right, so he went and talked to the trainers, and they said, yeah, it's fine. But what was his body language like? Did he look upset?
He immediately went to the bench, and that's when it was a concern when he goes straight there and is calling the trainers over. But after he seemed okay, which was one of the most encouraging parts. So good question there, Ryan. And if he's back out there on Monday with no limitations, then I'm thinking, okay, it really was just he got freaked out, and so they shut him down. That was smart. If he has any limitations, Mace, I'm right there with you. You got to play the long game with Bradley Chubb, just like you're doing with KJ Hamler. And this is because KJ, this is a hamstring again. He had this at the combine, why he didn't run the 40. And obviously Chubb, again, an even more severe injury with the torn ACL. So I totally agree with you guys. And there was other bad news on the injury front today. Graham Glasgow went out early in practice. Hobbling off, went straight to the locker room, did not return yet. Austin Schlottman come in for him. And speaking of Schlottman, Lloyd Cushenberry was the starting center all day. Who knows if he would have been the starting center for the rest of practice, but Ryan, yeah. I think that competition's over. I think it's Cushenberry's job, but Schlottman may still have the job, unfortunately. Vic Fangio said that he tweaked his knee, that Glasgow tweaked his knee, but didn't know how bad it was. So we will definitely be in wait and see mode for that one. And that would, he's your highest paid offensive lineman. He's your highest paid offensive player right now. You can't really overstate how big of a loss that would be.
Let's not think about the cost, because if something happens to Glasgow and you think of what you're paying him and what you paid Jawan James last year, that's kind of frightening. Schlottman being right guard, couple of things. Number one, doesn't surprise me that he's the guy that goes, and I think pretty clearly he is the top interior backup among that group. Secondly, you talked about the right side of the offensive line struggling. Of course, we've discussed Elijah Wilkinson over the days, but was some of that Schlottman as well?
Yeah, it was. And maybe the blitzes that were coming inside, he wasn't picking up and having that communication, especially with Lloyd Cushenberry. They're fighting for the same job. They haven't been working next to each other. So that definitely could have been the case. But I mean, Von Miller did have a great sack coming on a stint, which could have been on the right guard. So yeah, that definitely could have been, but it was really Von Miller that was crushing practice. And every time but that stint, he was coming from the outside. So Schlotman was getting pushed back a little bit, but not terrible.
Okay. That makes sense.
Oh man, this is where are you at in terms of your confidence in the defense versus your confidence in the offense after seeing them kind of go live today?
Yeah, today it definitely was the first time where I was thinking maybe this is more on the offense than the defense being dominant. But I mean, you still have all the pieces on defense. Von Miller, man, it probably all comes down to Von Miller. If Von Miller really is as good as he's been this training camp, going up against true starting right tackles, then this defense is going to be great, because this defense, the quarterback's always going to have pressure in his face. You're going to have interior pressure from Casey, and the secondary is going to be fine. But if quarterbacks get all day in the pocket to sit there, because it's really Elijah Wilkinson that's letting Von Miller come through and through and through, then you could see cracks in the secondary. Today, I got to say, Isaac Yiadom and Devontae Harris both looked really good as the third corners when they were in there. So I was very impressed with both of those guys today.
Any reps for DeMar Dotson with the ones?
No.
So does that tell you that Elijah Wilkinson was playing to the capabilities that Vic Fangio believes he is capable of?
I mean, one day after Vic Fangio says that, Elijah comes out and, I wonder how much of a benefit of the doubt they're giving him, because he's going against Von Miller. Or is that going to take until after Tennessee for them to say, okay, it's not just going against Von Miller? Or are they going to say after Monday night, they're going to say, you know what? Yeah, this guy held his own, only allowed one sack or no sacks or one pressure, and it's just Von Miller's that good.
Okay.
You can't give the Von Miller benefit of the doubt out, to be honest, in my opinion. Just because there are so many players that are that good in this league that you're going to face.
Especially in this division.
Yeah, and, Von's great, but there's lots of guys out there. There's Joey Bosa. In week 2, you're going to see TJ Watt. You're going to have to face Shaq Barrett at some point this year. Week 3.
Think about what you're seeing in the first few weeks of the season here, guys. I mean, we talked TJ. You got TJ Watt, and you got Bud Dupree in Pittsburgh, and then you got Shaq Barrett, and the Bucs have a good interior pass rush as well. This is going to be pretty heavy early for this team.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I would just so much rather have the guy out there who has been doing this for 10 years and is going to say, he's probably going to get beat. Anyone will if they go up against those guys. Yeah. But that he has the experience under his belt to not get in his head, to stick with his technique, to just be a sound player who knows, okay, I'm going to get beat here and there, but I'm not going to let one mistake compound another. I would just feel so much more comfortable with that. Again, I get what Vic Fangio was saying the other day is Elijah's to lose. Okay, but I feel like he's losing it, and they aren't acting.
Yeah, it certainly feels like that. And so when's the turning point going to be? We saw after an off day, that's when DeMar Dotson got his first reps with the first team yesterday, after the Broncos were off for 2 days. They have an off day tomorrow, and this was kind of the biggest test in a live scrimmage. Is the change going to happen Monday? Are we going to see DeMar Dotson at least get one more series with the ones? Are we going to see him split the time? And now's the time to, if you're not going to at least make the move, now's the time to try something else and experiment. Get DeMar Dotson half the reps, because you got 1 week left of training camp.
Yep, it's come up on us quick. So you got it, right, like you said, if you're going to make this move, you got to make it soon. And it just doesn't feel like they are. And I really hope it's not that halftime of game 1 where you're saying, okay, we got to do something here because we're losing 17-7 or whatever it may be.
Yeah, because our quarterback's been sacked 4 times. Another scare today was Drew Lock's foot was stepped on a 3rd down incompletion, and he hobbled off. And that was terrifying for a minute. He turned out okay. Didn't even have trainers look at him. Just obviously it hurts when you get stepped on, but who knew what was happening there. And it just gives you terrible thoughts of what this offense would be. Although Jeff Driscoll was better than Drew Lock today. I don't think that would have been the case if Drew was going up against the 2s and Jeff was going up against the 1s. But this is the best I've seen Jeff Driscoll look. So, guys, maybe he's just a gamer.
Maybe when the lights go on, metaphorically speaking. Of course, he was going against the 2s, was he not?
Yeah, exactly. He was going up against the 2s, and it's not like he was perfect. He did have a pick. But Albert,
real quick though, like
okay.
Malik Reed, I know he didn't do it on purpose, but if I'm the coach, he's running gassers until the sun goes down tonight. You do not ever step on my quarterback's foot.
Yeah, I agree with that. Malik Reed just got his foot in there. And speaking of Malik Reed and the number 2s, Albert O was the player of the day on the offensive side of the ball. Now, he was going up against the 2s all practice. That's important to note. But this guy, guys, I just like the veterans are praising Jerry Jeudy. This guy has quietly got some incredible praise from veterans. Today, Drew Lock was asked about Alberto after practice, and he just got this smirk on his face, which just said more than his answer itself. And then his answer was great too. He said he's sneaky fast in the red zone. He can just squeeze by and get open. And we saw that today. We saw it twice. He had a touchdown pass on a little 2-yard bootleg where he just got open in the defense, made the catch. And then another one, it was a great little play design where, the quarterback runs out. I'm just forgetting the name of the play. And you have the tight end who's following, but on the inside, and the tight end kind of pitches it
shovel.
to him. Yeah. You had the shovel pass. And somehow, 6'5", 260 pounds, he slides by the defense, gets in for the easy score, made another nice catch for a first down in the red zone. Now, he did bobble a ball, which I believe was picked off after. So he's not perfect either. But the promise that he showed through 2 weeks, he started off working with the third team. Now he's working with the second team. With the way Drew likes him, the chemistry they have, I know you have Noah Fant, but this guy has just flashed too much not to at least have certain packages for him.
Love it. I love that idea, and I love the fact that the Broncos, for the first time in a while, have some dynamic players at the tight end position, and they're so deep there. Jake Butt, the buzz has kind of worn off a little bit. You haven't heard his name in a while now. But, even without him, even if you just said Nick Vanette, Noah Fant, Albert O, you're saying, like, wow, that is a group that could do some damage. And again, and the long-term projection for Albert Okwuegbunam is legitimate. So that's exciting for the Broncos, Maybe I hate that I'm saying this, and I don't want to go here this early, but maybe it's not this year for the offense, and maybe they're able to fortify the offensive line over the next 12 months, and maybe next year this offense is really something special, and that doesn't mean they can't be good enough this year to get the Broncos into the playoff discussion, but I'm so ready for this offense to be legitimate. And they have so many pieces that they should and could be legitimate. But it is starting to feel like that offensive line could hold them back this year, which was something that we knew in the back of our heads all along, especially after Juwan James opted out. So maybe, between now and a year from now, they're able to take care of that portion of things, and then they could be really, really scary.
And this is where you have to look for just kind of incremental improvement and step back as you get close to the end of the season or at the end of the season. And if you look down and say the offense averaged 22.5 points per game, it may not be something that in a vacuum moves the needle, but then you look and say, well, my goodness, that was 4.5, 5 points more than they averaged the year before. So I think that's where we're going to be sitting at the end of the season with this offense, in that it made the leap to average.
Yep.
And it's not sexy, but if the defense does what you expect it to, an average offense plus this defense, gentlemen, this is why last December I said this team was going to the playoffs in 2020.
Yeah, well, and yeah, exactly, Mason. If you look at the long-term projections, especially just 1 year from now, after this season, if unless things go colossally wrong on the offensive side, you should really only have one hole to fill. Now, I would say 2, left tackle and right tackle, but Juwan James is your right tackle next year because of the money he's owed. Left tackle, that's it. Your receivers are set, your tight ends are set, your running backs are set, your quarterback is set, your left guard, center, right guard is set. So one position to take off. So it's definitely very encouraging when you look at the long play. I know Ryan doesn't want to believe it, and I understand it, but just maybe a slow start this year. You just hope that start can end at some point in the first half of the season.
You're gonna have continuity. That's huge. How often do you hear that from coaches and players? And how often have the Broncos had continuity on offense the last 5 years? Every year, a new coordinator, new wrinkles, maybe not new language, but a lot of new stuff flowing at you. So, and you mentioned that. Imagine a scenario, Zach and RK, where you've got 10 starters back, or not, maybe 9 starters, because you'll insert Juwan James. And he's not playing this year. But 9 starters back, Pat Shurmur back as the OC, no schematic changes, and all these young players 1 year more experienced. I feel pretty good about this offense being something special in due time. It's just, I don't know if it's going to be this year.
Yeah, I think it's fair. It's fair. And I'm not trying to say that shouldn't ever happen, that's not going to happen where the offense takes a little bit of time to get back to it. But I don't want that to be okay. It shouldn't be accepted because this team cannot afford to ease their way in the first 6 weeks of the season. They got to go out and get some wins.
Yeah, they absolutely have to. And it seems like it's going to be on the back of the defense. And Trey Marshall made a play today with the second team defense, had a pick, just read a play perfectly, read the quarterback's eyes the whole way, jumped the route. We know he's the third safety, but haven't seen anything else. So it's good to see a little flash from him being the Broncos' third safety. A couple other notes from practice today, guys. Jerry Jeudy had a fantastic 50-yard catch down the middle of the field in tight coverage. A great ball thrown by Jeff Driscoll. And so it was going against the second team. But, man, it was good to see that because it was a contested catch. He went up, high-pointed the ball, made the catch at the 10-yard line. So it would have been a huge play.
Nice. Love to hear it. Anything else we need to know, Zach?
Starting, we finally got to see a little bit of special teams. And to no surprise, Deontay Spencer, starting punt returner, starting kick returner.
All right, yeah. We kind of had him penciled in, and it's probably time to get out the old Sharpie for him. What about any takes on the punter position?
Sam Martin. I got to see him punt to the right guys, and as we found out earlier this week, what a rare sight that is to see. Man, he had, and I don't know if this punt was to the right or not, but he had a boomer. It was great. And then he followed it up with a punt to the right that went 32 yards. So that wasn't good.
Nobody's perfect, but he needs to be consistent because the reason why the last guy isn't here anymore, Colby Wadman, was that he was maddeningly inconsistent. And, punting to the left, he's downright robotic. It's the same thing over and over. Punting to the left, right, not so much.
But just have him punt to the left.
Man.
Maybe on the 4-year plan.
Oh, man.
Oh, boy.
Really quick, one more note. Draymond Jones, I noticed him on the field a lot. Opposite Jarrell Casey, so it was Shelby Harris who was coming out for him. Shelby did have a PBU on the day, but Draymond Jones was on the field a lot.
Yeah, and are you talking about sub package or base? Because we've been seeing the Draymond Jones, Jarrell Casey sub package in pass rush situations a lot without a nose tackle there. But did we have Draymond Jones working in that 3-man line in the base? That's my question.
Yep, he was in there for both. Mike Purcell in between them.
That's huge. And I mean, it could be trending toward Shelby Harris being the rotational guy and Draymond Jones being the starter. It's nothing that Shelby Harris hasn't done, but Draymond Jones, every day it seems like he makes a play or two.
And he's the future.
Zach, here's the last thing. Apparently, Drew Lock pulled a Zach.
Yes, he did, man. I so wanted to yell it. No, I could have yelled it on the Zoom, and I was muted anyways. So, someone was muted, and Drew called him out on it.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's so good. All right, I think that's going to wrap it up for the live portion of the show. Thanks to everyone who tuned in with us on this Saturday night. Of course, as training camp wraps up this week, we'll still be going live after each and every practice. So stay tuned with us for that. And, of course, if you want to get your questions in, which, of course, we will answer, you can always go to the DNVR.com/subscribe, become a member, and join us in the podcast format of this, where we will give you all of the answers to all of your questions. But for now, it's going to wrap up the live portion, so we will talk to you guys later.